So since you guys always help us out, we're going to help you out. We went out there and got somebody big, somebody known, somebody we kind of talk about on the Convo Couch all the time. You know her, ladies and gentlemen. Whitney Webb is with us. How you doing, Whitney?
Hey, I'm doing good. Great to be here.
I'm sorry to go too crazy and over the top like I normally do. It's kind of like a mellow Monday right now with stuff going on because I think there's a lot of kind of differences of opinion out there. We see a lot of people on the left talking about this election like, oh, Donald Trump's getting these cases thrown out. This is just silly. He should just kick it over to Biden without really ever addressing the issues within this election. And then you got Rudy Giuliani getting ready to set his case and go on par and do what he talked about when he had his press conference the other day. You know, most people want to make fun of the hair dye going down, but he focused on the fact that these ballots were not scrutinized. And you've been doing a lot of report when it came to the PARASCRIPT and the AI machines. We, in fact, went to Pomona where they have the mail-in facility. We saw all the ballots going. So my first question to you is this. It's a multiple choice question. A, ready? A, Biden won fair and square. B, it was stolen for Trump. Or C, this is all kabuki theater, something else bigger is going on, and Whitney Webb is going to tell us what it's all about.
Oh, man. All right. I'm going to have to go somewhere between B and C. I think there was election fraud that took place, but I don't think it was to steal it from Trump. I think, and I've been reporting about this for like over a year, it was gamed out for the 2020 election to have there be chaos, to have there be no clear winner, and to have like this complete chaotic scenario between the election and Inauguration Day. And I think what happened is that they didn't, all this different scenarios they gained out through like the Transition Integrity Project and other groups required that it be a close election, that it had to be like relatively tight, like it was either a narrow Trump win or a narrow Biden win. No one could have won by a landslide and allow all of that planned chaos to take place. So I think they had to make it closer and and I think that's why all of these indicators of something weird going on ended up taking place. Because I mean, like, if you just look at the enthusiasm, right, for either Biden or versus Trump in the rallies, I mean, Biden couldn't even attract like 12 people at most events. Obama couldn't even attract that amount of people when they rolled him out. And even if you want to use the excuse of the pandemic and coronavirus, you had like a live stream not that long before the election with Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders, and you had less than 2,000 people tune in live. I mean, Jimmy Dore and people like that get more people live on YouTube than that live stream got. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, so it's like, I honestly, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, I didn't follow everything that's gone on in terms of the counts and all of that super closely, but there are a lot of indicators, and there have been for years, that Silicon Valley is trying to take over the election system. And this has advanced in a huge way in this election. So people on the left ignore these indicators at their own peril, because Silicon Valley hates progressives just as much as they hate Trumpers or Trump or whatever, right? So, I mean, you think about the people that rigged it against Bernie this year. I mean, it was people like LinkedIn's founder, Reid Hoffman, who was Biden's biggest donor. And all of that Silicon Valley money on the quote unquote left was behind Biden during the primaries. And, you know, they do not like progressives. So, I mean, people that are just like want to dismiss all of this because, oh, well, it means Trump lost. I mean, you're really doing yourself a disservice, I think.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow,
I mean, she just said it right there. How much did this, going to your article now, because we did break it down a few weeks ago, but how much did these AI systems, PARASCRIPT, play a part in the validation of signatures to these mail-in ballots, especially in seeing in the swing states?
Well, so we don't know, actually, because PARASCRIPT won't say how pervasive their software was used, but we know it was used in places like Clark County, Nevada, and some other places that were really contentious. And what's interesting is that there's no federal or national, you know, like regulation over how that type of software is used. So it's up to the individual county to determine how much human oversight there is for these things. And there were several where it's like they just let the AI validate and they don't really check at all.
Yeah.
You know, 1% or less of all ballots they approve. And this AI system had never been used for mail-in ballots ever before in any other sort of election. It was just announced in May, and they were like, all right, we're going to roll with it. And there was like no scrutiny about this. And this is a company that's had deep ties with Silicon Valley giants for decades, Microsoft and Apple, and are particularly close to Lockheed Martin, which is a huge contractor to the U.S. Postal Service, which, of course, with mail-in ballots, super involved in that, right? And Lockheed Martin, of course, is like at the heart of the military-industrial complex, was also involved in setting up the CIA's In-Q-Tel, so they're tied to intelligence. They also have ties to Cyber Reason, which is the Israeli intelligence front company, really, that was simulating 2020 election chaos for like 2 years, right? So, like, I mean, it's just really ridiculous. And I also think it's really telling too that you have people on the right talking about how this was rigged and all this stuff, and they won't look at this company. Why not? I think that's a little weird too. Like, there's some of these indicators, I think, about how, you know, the Trump people or whatever aren't really serious about challenging certain aspects of you know, things that threaten the integrity of U.S. elections, because I think this was pre-planned, and this is sort of a pre-planned chaos scenario we're seeing that was gamed out really by both sides, Republicans and Democrats, you know, to the benefit of oligarchs that, you know, fund both parties, really. So,
interesting point too, because the only area I think these the machines are really up for grabs when it comes to the 6 states they're going after is Nevada. So I don't know if they're just backlogged and they haven't got to these machines yet. But that is the whole point of this election, where they're trying to upturn it. It's the scrutiny with the signatures of the ballot. And I think that the Democrats tipped their hat off in the HEROES Act when they tried to take that amendment out, saying they less verification on the signatures, but it was shot down. And it's so funny that you wrote about this here. We actually saw a machine like this in California, in Pomona, and it was just sending these ballots through, sending them through. There was no scrutiny whatsoever. Now it's like at the height of everything, they're going to try to make a case on these ballot signatures. But how much, and once again, I think this is still a long way from being over. More than likely, I think we'll see Joe Biden become the president. But what does that mean for independent media groups? Because, you know, you've worked with The Last American Vagabond. You've experienced censorship. What does it mean for censorship for independent media people like ourselves and yourselves if Joe Biden does get into the White House?
Well, I think censorship's going to be bad regardless of who gets in the White House. But with Biden, I think it's just going to be out of control, because basically the force that you have behind Biden, you have the neocons on the Republican side, you have the national security state, you have the Silicon Valley oligarchs. It's worth pointing out, talking about the DNC. The DNC is totally fused with Silicon Valley. All of their top tech officials, their chief technology officer, their chief security officer, their chief information security officer, all come from Facebook. They come from Google. They come from all of these places, right? So the DNC and Silicon Valley, are essentially the same. You also have the national security state and the intelligence community fusing essentially with Silicon Valley as it relates to artificial intelligence stuff. You have all these Silicon Valley companies like Microsoft and Google being major government contractors to the military, to the intelligence community, Amazon too. So, this is really the force that's backing Biden. I mean, Biden is just, the person that they marched out. That's, the public face of that entity, really. I call it a blob, because it's really what it is, all of these different groups that have come together. And so Silicon Valley, you've already seen, right, what those companies like to do when it comes to censorship. And so, you're going to have those different groups come together. I mean, they're not going to want the kind of scrutiny that independent media can, offer, right? And I wrote about this more recently. Basically, there's this company that the military has contracted, and this is going to be implemented at some point next year. They're called Primer AI, and basically they're an AI algorithm that basically deplatforms and takes down news, and it's being developed by people who developed counter-terror tools to combat ISIS propaganda online, and now they're weaponizing that against people in independent media now. And at the same time, you have the Five Eyes Alliance being led by UK's NSA equivalent, GCHQ, declaring cyber war basically against news websites who produce content they don't like, and that they're not just going to deplatform the sites themselves, they're also saying that they will scramble the communications of the people who run those sites so they can't set their site back up. And that was also stuff they allegedly used to target members of ISIS, and now that's being weaponized against independent media. I mean, it's absolutely out of control. And the fact that we can see them setting that up now, they're not just setting that up for fun. I mean, they plan to use that. So I think it's definitely, we're going to be seeing a lot more censorship going forward. So people like us are going to have to get a little more creative, but definitely our days are very numbered on the mainstream, Silicon Valley platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm.
I feel that way too.
Yeah. So going off of all of that, right now they're talking about shutting down again. And California, Gavin Newsom actually issued a curfew from 10 to 5 a.m. and then he issued another one where he's closing down restaurants again. And I can't tell you how horrible that is for a lot of people working for these restaurants and businesses and, of course, the small business community. But aside from all of that, we're seeing this push to social distance, keep away from people, stay at home, while these oligarchs get to go to the gym, get to go to fancy dinners, get to go to Hawaii.
Totally.
So what is going on regarding AI and COVID that you and also the civil unrest that may or may not happen depending on how this election goes in the next few weeks?
Well, I think they're conditioning people for neo-feudalism is what I like to call it, because basically this whole thing of like Gavin Newsom can go and eat dinner and not have to wear a mask and can, this sort of, these rules are for the little people and not for us. I mean, I think that's really telling, and I think that's just going to continue. And this is trying to condition a lot of people in the public to just, do as you're told type of stuff. I mean, I think not that long ago, there was like Fauci or whatever saying Americans like their freedom, but now you just have to buckle down and do what you're told. The last people we should be listening, just doing what we're told by is, the national security state and Silicon Valley oligarchs and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What's going on behind the scenes with AI is very alarming. You basically have Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, running the AI modernization policy of the entire national security state. And what those people believe, they're called the National Security Commission on AI, and they have a lot of power, is that the only way to maintain the U.S.'s military and also economic hegemony in the world is to basically force an extreme shift in how the American economy works by moving in a huge way towards automation and the implementation of AI, in order to maintain that hegemonic role to keep America number one. And that is all these people care about, is being number one and maintaining the power for them and maintaining the status quo. There's no way they're going to put this stuff to a vote or ask the average American's opinion, right? Do you want your jobs to go away and be given to robots forever so we can beat China and, have a better economy, be a market leader and all of this stuff? I mean, obviously people would say no, and they don't care, right? So basically, Eric Schmidt in the middle of October said, we have to win this at all costs. That's a direct quote, at all costs. So what does that mean? Well, basically, if you're going to be shutting down the economy, all these small business, medium-sized businesses can't weather the storm, especially at this point. So they're going to be shutting down. All of that business is going to be going to, just think about like small shops or something. All that's going to go to Amazon, right? And so Amazon's just going to get bigger and bigger. And, all the shopping is going to be online, and then they can use, automate everything. Jeff Bezos for years has wanted to put robots in the warehouse. And now they can say, oh, well, because of COVID, it's actually healthier and safer to not have people in the warehouses. We'll just have robots do everything because robots can't get sick and spread the virus and all of this stuff, right? So, a lot of the stuff they wanted to see implemented, and they were planning all these changes to the economy and how we had to remake the American economy for AI. They were planning all of this out last year. I reported on this back in April on some of the documents that they were, throwing around. And it's just really, it's really unsettling. And I think a lot of people are, ignoring this at their own peril too. Like people saying the quote unquote Great Reset or whatever isn't a real thing, when it's really the same agenda I just laid out, but on a global scale. But the people implementing it in the U.S. are this National Security Commission on AI, people like Eric Schmidt and Bob Work, who used to be the Deputy Secretary of Defense under Obama. He's part of the Biden transition team. So you can kind of guess how that's going to go, right? Yeah. It's not good at all, because it's a recipe for the complete really erosion of privacy and civil liberties in the US. AI requires an extreme increase in surveillance, basically. So it'll just be, I mean, it's not a future anyone really wants if they spend the time to think about it.
Yeah. Last question, Whitney, we'll get you out of here. What do us humans need to do, the plebs, the small people, what do we need to do to stop this? I mean, at what point are we at right now? I mean, because it's kind of surreal looking at this election where we're at right now and everything we're going through. But everything else you've been talking about, we've been paying attention to. What do we do as humans to stop this? The people, we the people.
Okay, we need to starve these Silicon Valley assholes of our data. They want us to wear like wearables, like Amazon just came out with a new one, the Fitbits and all of that stuff. Don't use that stuff. If you have to use a smartphone for your job, okay, but there's things you can do to divest a little bit from this technology that's harvesting you for data. These people like Eric Schmidt see you as data to be harvested, essentially. So, one way to fight against that is to, deprive them of your data to the greatest extent you possibly can, without causing obvious, economic harm or whatever to yourself. It's also really important that we start getting local, sort of unplug a little bit from screen world and just, having all of our interactions and our protests or whatever being online. I mean, all of that stuff, we have to come back to the real world for a little bit, build community, at the local level and really try and decentralize as much as possible from this extreme centralization that's being dominated by the national security state and Silicon Valley oligarchs to the greatest extent possible. And we also need to remember, especially with what's going on in the election, I mean, in my honest opinion, I mean, this is a complete psyop to have us Trump supporters mad at the Biden supporters, and we're going to be arguing about who's doing the coup. And Democrats are saying Trump's trying to do a coup, and Republicans are saying, the Democrats are doing a coup. I mean, that is clearly having you yelling at your neighbor while we're ignoring the oligarchs that are trying to basically screw us all over and make us, hurt us into like feudalism, right? Which is not something anyone wants.
Yeah, that's a real coup. That's a real coup.
I still think we need to eat 100%. One of them. We have to eat an elite, couple elites, praise them up. You know what I'm saying? I'm a vegan, but we'll eat the rich. Whitney, thank you so much for coming here with us and sharing all your knowledge. You do some amazing work. Yes. Can you tell everybody where they can find you? We know we've had some problems with the last American Vagabond getting shut down and whatnot.
But they're on Rokfin, right?
They are on Rokfin, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah. I'm also on Rokfin, and I have my own website, unlimitedhangout.com, and my Rokfin channel is also called Unlimited Hangout, so you can find my stuff there. For now, I'm on Twitter for the time being, but I'm also setting up, accounts on all the alternative social media platforms. I'm on Telegram right now. Unlimited Hangout has a Telegram channel you can sign up for and follow. In the meantime, and I'll be adding more over time, because it's really time that we start, trying to diversify a little bit in terms of how we reach people online. We can't depend on these Silicon Valley platforms anymore.
That's awesome.
100%. Thank you so much, Whitney. We appreciate you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.